All right, I have no idea if that intro worked this morning because it didn't show on my end. Did it show on your guys' end at all?
Yeah.
It did.
All right, awesome. Because that's why I started and stopped it, so it's going to look weird. I just had like a blank blue wall on my end, so I'm glad that it played for everybody else. But welcome to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks. Here, as always, with Cara Braeutigam from the Canadian Camping and RV Council. We've got a super exciting show for you today, talking about glamping trends, things of that nature. We've got David here. He's going to introduce himself in a second. Tom Mason introduce himself as well. I think Heather's here, Canadian campground owner. She's on, but she doesn't have her camera on yet, so I will let her join once she has a chance to get set up. But got quite a bit we're going to cover today. If you want to join the conversation, we can pull in your chats and things like that from Facebook if you're watching us live. And then remember, we are available as a podcast too, and it's on our website, mcfiresidechats.com, if you want to catch it later. So let's just go around real quick and introduce ourselves. So I think we both know, or all know, David from his conferences and things like that. But David, tell us a little bit about you and what you've been up to lately.
Sure. My name is David Korse. I'm one of the owners of the Glamping Show USA and our new trade magazine, Glamping Business Americas. And getting ready for the October event, we're incredibly excited. We get to do this live and in person as opposed to digitally the way we had to do last year. So we're busy and getting set for October. I frankly cannot wait to see people live and in person. The way we did, 2019 was the last time. So welcome back, everybody.
Definitely excited to be back. So Tom, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, my name is Tom Mason. I head up the IVEE Group, which is a third-party management company. We presently have 9 resorts and campgrounds that we manage, and we're in a variety of different states across the U.S. And so far, we've had a nice year so far and continue to look forward to a busy summer as we head into that.
Awesome. So I know we have a couple of Canadian park owners who are supposed to join us here as well to kind of discuss adding glamping to their parks and run some ideas back and forth. We do only have David for a half hour. He's got way more important things to do than chat with us for a full hour. So David, I want to just start a little bit with you and maybe focus a little bit more on you. And like Tom, we're going to talk to you, but we'll focus more on you maybe in the second half.
Yeah, that's fine.
A time thing here. But David, we know about the glamping conference that's coming in October, but before we get started into this, just tell us a little bit about the magazine and all of the things that brought you to start that.
I would love to say it was a carefully thought out strategic decision to launch, but not so much. Our UK partners publish a magazine called International Glamping Business. They do 14,000 print issues in the UK and Western Europe, another 14,000 internationally digitally. And at the 2019 show, they did a special edition in print and brought it over from England as our show directory and magazine. And they did the same thing again digitally when we did the virtual show last year. And we got literally hundreds of people saying, when's the next magazine coming out? So we talked to our partners and they said, sure, we can make this an American kind of event or publication. And we decided US was probably too limited because in the virtual event, we had so many people from not just Canada, but Latin America who attended. So we changed the name to Glamping Business Americas. It's quarterly, it's digital. It's kind of amazing. We have over 4,000 subscribers. Subscriptions are free, and you can register on our website. A little over 3,000 here in the States, a little over 300 in Canada, and over 500 in Latin America. So it's the business of glamping. The idea is that every article you read, all the content will either give you business content, either to improve or to launch or to understand something that's happening in the industry you can use to make tomorrow a little more productive than yesterday. First issue is February. Our third issue is coming out in about 3 weeks. Subscriptions are up 5%, a little more than that since we launched. And so far, so good. There you go.
So I know Cara has a bunch of questions. I have a bunch of questions. We want to talk about all things glamping and stuff like that. But what are some things that you've covered in the magazine or your team has covered in the magazine that really you think are maybe some important topics we should be talking about right now with the glamping industry as a whole?
It's a difficult question because there's magazines
So
of
much.
reasonably substantial
Right,
kind.
there's so
So
much. Yeah. I'm just asking for one or two top things to come to.
some of the content that I'm been most interesting to me. You guys probably are familiar with Anne and Mike Howard from Honey Trek. Or if you aren't, you should find out who Honey Trek is. It's kind of a great story about the honeymoon that has never ended. But they're talking about the customer experience, the guest experience, and they've been to a couple of hundred sites around the world over the last 5 or 6 years. So they're kind of giving best practices from that point of view. Got content on disaster recovery and disaster planning and the different kinds of structures and features on tents one issue and on yurts and teepees and the next issue, and I can't even remember what's coming up the next one. So with all due respect, it's pretty broad-based. I would rather you just went and looked at the free issue. Again, it costs nothing to read it and to review it, and it's available on our site.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk about, what do we have first, Cara? Like, take it in a direction for me. So
I think, yeah, this is such a big topic. Yeah, Heather, feel free to join in with us at any time. I think for me, I'm really interested in hearing specifically about kind of the decision-making process that maybe goes into making the choice to diversify maybe your existing business this way, and then the specific logistical challenges and hurdles that are typically required to jump to get from a point of making that choice and then opening a glamping site for rental. So to me, that there's all kinds of logistics around infrastructure requirements, things like reservation strategies. Maybe you're listing those sites in a different way than you would make your RV sites reservable. Also things like weather and seasonality and maintenance of these units and things like that. There's so many deciding factors that go in. So maybe let's start, I think personally, with the infrastructure requirements. I think that's a big logistical point for making the choice to go this way. Do we see glamping units require power and water and sewer connection? Is that typical, or are they starting to go that way?
And Cara, who are you asking?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Chime in.
Probably you primarily, David, because you've got more experience with these vendors and seeing and talking to them, right?
Mm-hmm. For the most part, the answer in terms of having to hook up to electricity and to sewage and stuff is not so much. I think people are tending to make this an extension of traditional camping. It's just the structure and the amenities are very different. It's still about the experience. It depends where you are too. Being on a mountaintop in Montana, a little bit more challenging than being in suburban Santa Barbara, California, where things are easier to get to. So it's a very much a location-centric decision. But I think all of our vendors are prepared to service new clients that don't have access to those kinds of utilities and infrastructure, and with sustainable power alternatives, and whether it's solar or wind or other options and other kinds of bathroom and shower and toilet options. I think you can find sustainable alternatives almost regardless of where you are. And the same thing for weather and seasonality. We have a lot of vendors who are going out of their way to make sure that they take a picture of the structure, at the North Pole and in the middle of the Gobi Desert, and say you can go either place with our structure or with our special construction. It's one of the fun things about the show with the outdoor exhibit area. I don't know who remembers from 2019, but we had 70-degree weather. 70-degree weather for a day and a half and snow showers on Wednesday afternoon, and our exhibitors were out there saying, "See, look, this works. We're staying."
That's Mother Nature helping you out. Yeah, wow.
We paid a little extra for that, but so
I bet.
I think from everybody I talk to, the biggest reasons for glamping are to provide a positive alternative for people who want something different or more than traditional camping or RV experience, but more importantly, a whole new demographic. People who don't own an RV or want to rent one, people who don't own a tent or a sleeping bag, but still want to experience the wonder of being outside. And suddenly, it may not be a mint on the pillow at night, but you can just show up and have the experience. And that's just a giant demographic that folks can reach out to successfully and perhaps charge a higher overnight rate than just for an RV or a traditional camping site.
Right.
I would say as an operator, David, to your last points there, I think that's kind of what for an operator is exciting, is that this, if done right, you open up to a whole segment of the population that we wouldn't necessarily have attracted in the past.
Yep.
And so I think that's important. Like anything, we see this business growing. I don't think glamping's a trend anymore. I think it's more of a here forever, and we'll see it continue to grow. I could be wrong, but if reading on this space and all that, it's the fastest growing segment within the camping industry, I think.
Yep.
And I think that will continue for a long period of time. And I think, you said earlier, as an operator, for me, it's about a unique lodging setup. That's what I would look at. I think location is an important component. No offense, I have a couple parks that we manage that are exits off a highway. I wouldn't even consider putting anything in there related to glamping. So, we want the guest and the customer to walk out of their unique lodging and see something spectacular. And then in addition to that, creating an experience within their stay that would that they can't accomplish doing anything else. I think that will be a big factor in getting them to continue to do this and come back over and over again.
Yeah, I think the flexibility, like we were talking about, right, is key, whether it's the hookups or whether it's the ability to do it in all different types of weather or wherever it's at. And it's interesting because it's a little bit controversial when you go through some of the groups and you hear people talking about Harvest Host, and we had the CEO, it was Joel, I think was his name, on a few months ago to talk about this stuff. The flexibility of glamping is interesting, and I know, again, this is super controversial, right? But we're talking primarily because we're talking about campground owners. We talked about adding glamping to your park, and that's going to be a huge driver of the industry growth. But also because you don't need the hookups and you don't need the traditional sewer at all the same places you would at a normal park, these are popping up all over the place. And whether that's good or bad remains to be seen, I think. I'm certainly not going to weigh in with my opinion. It's too early to do that. But it's interesting how big it diversifies, because you've seen this too, David, right? At some of the people who attend the associations, these are like, we have clients that have 3 tents in the middle of a field in Texas that they need marketing. And so they're not a campground. They have no RV sites. They have no real amenities beyond what is included with the tent, and they're finding a lot of success.
It's interesting to us, the demographics of people who come to the event. And interestingly, it's stayed almost identical for the 3 years we've been doing this. It breaks down into almost equal thirds. A third of the people who read the magazine or come to the show identify themselves as glamping operators, whether it's 3 tents in the middle of a field, or whether it's Paws Up in Montana, and they're just glamping. There isn't a traditional campground or RV component to it. The middle third is, and I don't know, there's probably a better term, but the one I've heard a lot is mixed use. It's what Cara's talking about, someone with an existing RV park or traditional campground who's talking about either has done it or in the process of adding glamping to the mix for a variety of reasons. And they've either done it already or they're in the process of giving it serious consideration. And they want to figure out, what do I do and what's different? How do I do it? And the final third are the people who I think are unfairly called the dreamers, the people who are just entering the business. And the reason I say that is this is not people just thinking about it and joining a Facebook group or something. These are people who are flying to Colorado, spending hundreds of dollars to go to a conference program, staying in a hotel. They may have the land, they may be some part of the process, but they're very serious about it. They're doing business due diligence and want to figure out what this is all about. And so it's interesting you have all three different sectors that are all looking for different solutions and different information to try and figure out what to do next. And that's where the conference program comes in, or the magazine, because the demographics for both are identical.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. I'm interested to hear about if anybody has any input on how you make the choice between maybe a teepee and an outfitter's tent and a dome. Do you, in your experience so far, do you get to communicate with operators who are making those choices, and how do they? There's so many options. I can't even wrap my brain around it.
What we hear from most of our clients is it really is based on, for the most part, it's personal style and preference. It's understanding, hopefully, the demographic you're trying to reach, but also the environment. You can see that someone would be looking at a teepee probably a little more aggressively somewhere in the Rocky Mountains, or up in the Dakotas or someplace, or down in Florida, because the Seminoles were down there. A teepee in Roosevelt Island in New York City might be a little less something someone would pick. So I think style and design make a big part of this, but a lot of it's personal preference. It's what you think is going to look good, or you feel like this is what I want to sell, this is what I want to market, this gives me an advantage. One person looking at a treehouse, and the same person in a different environment will pick a different structure, and that's what makes it so much fun at the expo, when you have all of these things out on 4 acres of grass. And as Brian saw last time around, people going from a wall tent to a yurt to a covered wagon to a dome to a bell tent, and just every exhibitor's trying very hard to explain the benefits of his or her solution to the same option.
One important component, I think, you're right, there's a lot of choices out there, as David pointed out, and we've all heard. But I think, again, as I look at moving into this space, I think there's a need for some variety in the location to offer different types of accommodations. I think the more accommodations you offer, and I mean, you're somewhat limited on, the cost structure and whatnot and location, as David pointed out. But I think offering some variety of different types is, again, opens up to a larger group of potential guests and customers. That's how
Does that all have to be on the same property, though? Because here's what comes to mind, right? And you're a hotel guy, Tom, so you tell me this. Like, if I'm looking at, there's domes, and then there's tents, and then there's just take 3 of the 4 main categories, right, of structures, even if they vary a little bit. Is that almost like a potential for a larger tourism area to have franchises that are different, or is it a mix on all properties?
I would look at it, again, it's a young industry, I would say, but I would probably take the approach of variety within each site.
Okay.
There's a KOA site not too far where we live. It's in Santa Paula, California, and he has at least 3 and maybe 4 different kinds of structures within his site. So you can stay in a tent over here, and there's a covered wagon over there. It gives diversity and some choice to consumers who are coming in. Maybe it gives them a reason to come back. I stayed in the wagon last time, and next time I'm going to stay in the yurt. So I think it gives the operator an opportunity to say, if you like being here this time, it isn't the same thing again. We're in a hotel. Maybe I'll check a different room next time, or a different style room.
Right.
So it just gives you diversity. It changes the experience.
Right. So then if you're putting that diversity on, and you have, let's just pretend you have the choice, right? And Cara, you used to own a park, and Tom, obviously you manage a bunch of them. If you had the choice, then do you have neighborhoods with all wagons in one area? Or do you have them staggered? Do you have, what is the ideal setup in your mind? Obviously that's different. It's totally opinion based, but
I think it's entirely dependent on your venue. I mean, how much space you have, how many structures, are they separate? Each has its own kind of space, and your neighbor's not that close away, or is it clustered in a village where you have 10 structures in an acre or 2 acres, and everybody sees everybody else? I think it's a very unique decision for each venue or each site to make based on that.
I'm just asking your opinion. Like, if you had unlimited, if you were building your own property, you had unlimited funds, what would you do?
I think it would really depend on.
You've never heard, David. You've been in this too long. Everybody asks you the same thing.
I think it would depend on the geographical. I mean, there's so many factors. I think, if you have a great viewpoint, maybe you pick a different type unit for that specific spot, and then strategize. I agree with David. I can't imagine pre-planning that kind of thing without seeing the space first.
Right. Topography would have a big play in what you put and where you put it. Mm-hmm. And I also think, although, we've talked about, do they need electrical, sewer, all that, there's probably going to be a component of that park that would have that. So that would dictate where maybe you place certain units. So, but I think in general, there's going to be a sense of neighborhood, you'll clump things together, but I would think, again, the variety, I would focus more on variety than having all cabin neighborhood, all teepee neighborhood, all wagon neighborhood.
To me, the best part about these glamping options is if you don't like where you put it, you can move it. For the most part, most of these units, you can move them and change them and switch things up. So, maybe somebody stays in the same covered wagon every summer, but it's in a different site each year or whatever. Like, to me, the just malleability of it is the fundamental, single greatest thing about them, in my opinion.
Oh, is it me? Do I have to come up with another topic?
Yeah, come up.
I'm waiting for somebody else to talk about something. So we have about a couple more minutes with David. He's got to go. David, with all of the things that you've seen in this industry, I'm trying to think of questions that you haven't been asked before, but where do you see the hotels playing a role in glamping? Do they start franchises that are totally glamping? Is there a Marriott type thing that is inevitable? Is it coming, or how do you view that?
Well, it's already here. I mean, Marriott opened up their Indonesian property a couple of years ago. It's an entirely glamping site. And I think the hotels haven't quite yet figured this out. Tom's point about, he thinks it's here to stay, and I agree with him, as opposed to being a fad. I just don't think they quite know what they're going to do, but I can't imagine they'll stay out of a profitable sector that gives them an opportunity to expand. It's just whether somebody opens up a dedicated glamping site or whether they add glamping to an existing site. There's one of my favorite resort hotels is close to where we live, and they've got 350 rooms over 200 acres. They're all spread out in the golf course and all the spots, just beautiful. But they have a couple of acres of open property, which is often a corner, which is undeveloped. And we've talked about it with them a couple of times just for fun. And they're thinking about it and just maybe creating a glamping site within the infrastructure of the whole hotel. Their questions are things like, do we offer room service to those places? Or is room service not part of this? Because room service now is all done by golf carts. I mean, there is no central place. It's all distributed over the 200 acres. So I know the conversations are happening, and whether it's happening at a corporate Marriott level or whether it's independent hoteliers who are thinking about doing something, I guess it'll shake out. I know we had some hoteliers who attended the 2019 conference as visitors, as conference delegates. Haven't seen any register yet because we just opened registration for October.
Sure.
But it wouldn't surprise me to see some badges out there as you're walking around the floor.
When is the conference, David? October what?
Oh, thank you, Cara. I was waiting for someone to ask the question. The normal exhibition and conference is Tuesday and Wednesday, October 5th and 6th. We're going back to Aurora, Colorado, same venue we had 2 years ago. The one thing we're doing, we've added, which is going to be kind of fun, we've added a half-day pre-show workshop on Monday the 4th. It's being sponsored by the American Glamping Association. It's for people who are either brand new or relatively new, and it's called Glamping Business Basics. It's an idea of getting somebody up to speed on Monday for a half day from 1 to 4:30 before the full conference comes on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Nice.
We weren't sure if this would work, so we launched it, and we're a little flabbergasted. The first 20 conference registrations we received when we opened, 18 of them chose to take the workshop also, as opposed to just the 2 days. So now people are making a 3-day commitment to come into the show. And on the exhibitor side, I'm excited to say we have international exhibitors. We have US, obviously, Canada, Mexico is new, England, Ireland is new, the Netherlands, South Africa, Australia, and the newest country to join the team is we have our first exhibitor from Japan. So
fabulous.
The trade show floor now is about 150% of the size we finished in 2019.
Wow.
So I think the show is reflecting all the things we're talking about here. It looks like it's going to be here for quite a long while. And a lot of new people and existing people trying to figure out how best to integrate and serve the industry. And hopefully the event gives them a platform for education and networking and shopping.
Absolutely.
So before you have to leave, David, and obviously we know that the conference is a great resource. We know that the Glamping Business America magazine is a great resource. Where would you send people to get information on a consistent basis throughout the year? If they're either a park operator or have land or wherever else, where should they go to get this information?
If they're looking for current stuff and frequent conversations like this one, I'd have to recommend the American Glamping Association. They literally have Wednesday calls open to all the members every week for people to network and ask questions. And they have some high-level speakers. Ruben and his team have done an outstanding job. The membership has grown dramatically. They're the ones who are helping produce this workshop we talked about. So on literally a weekly basis, there's a chance to interact with the AGA. Magazine's a great resource. It's quarterly, but it's online. You can see it anytime you want to. The show is only once a year, thank goodness. But it's the third chance to jump in up to here and spend 3 days just really immersing yourself in all the things we're doing. Beyond that, I don't have any other positive suggestions.
Well, I think that's participating
in this, by the way.
Yeah, good.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate your time this morning. I know you have to run, but yeah, that's definitely a good start. And I didn't, honestly, I've heard the name American Glamping Association, but I guess I didn't put it together as much as I should.
American Glamping Association, based in Denver. Ruben Martinez, who's also the CEO of Glamping Hub, is one of the founders. They actually launched the association during our event in 2019. So it's pretty new, and they're getting very, very good traction. A guest speaker will come in on Wednesday to talk about funding and financing. What are the options for how do you get a loan, or what do you have to do to qualify? And the next week it'll be talking about power supplies, and the next week about reservation systems. So tell Ruben I sent you, but they're doing. We love working with them, and I think they're doing a really good job for the industry.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
And I hope I'll see you all in October. That would be really nice.
Hope so.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Hey, David. Nice seeing you.
You too, Tom. Thanks for inviting me, guys. Have a good one.
Of course. Have a great day.
So Heather's here. Heather, can you hear it? I feel like we're letting Heather just kind of, I don't know if she's there.
Hang out.
But
yeah.
Brian, to your comment about hotels that you asked David earlier, he's right. So he's had some conversation. In my eyes, it's more about not if, it's more when. And it's going to happen. And who knows who's going to be the first player and how they'll roll into it. And I know there's, the Marriott I've heard about and that kind of stuff. But I think, you would look to the bigger organizations, Marriott, Hilton, IHG is probably trying to be the ones that jump into it first, just because they see the opportunity. And even more importantly, with the recent downturn that the hotel industry has experienced with COVID, the resiliency of our market, our segments, has proven to them that there's going to be another downturn caused by something else, or whatever. It's just it's more of a cyclical business where our world doesn't seem to have those cycles, and I think that will be very attractive to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I completely agree. I can't see why they wouldn't, frankly.
So let's tackle this. Let's explore this for a second, because I feel like if we talk about this is going to also lend some valuable insight to park operators who are considering adding this too. So let's rewind, Tom, and let's say you're still an operator of I forget your exact titles. I know you jumped around, but I know you have a lot of experience in hotels. So let's say you're still an operator of one of these hotels, and you have the opportunity to research, to plan, to organize, to deploy something that is glamping focused. What is your approach to that? How do you begin the process, and then how do you get to the point where you're ready to build?
Well, the process starts by doing your research and seeing what this segment, how it performs. Mm-hmm. And, you can take cabin rentals at most any of the RV parks and see how they're attractive to people. And I think location is going to be important. If you're in a location that can lend itself to unique topographical locations, views, venues, and you can create a unique experience with that, the amenity side's already built into the hotel, so you don't have to recreate that. And you just have to figure out what the lodging is based upon your location. So you have a unique lodging selection. You have the amenities already built into the hotel. The experience in most cases, let's say you're going to be doing it at a resort hotel. Resort hotels typically already have some sort of level of experience, whether it's horseback riding, kayaking, food shows, wine tasting, those things. So that experiential component's already built in. So, and if you're in the right location, you have some of the key factors. All you have to figure out is the accommodation you want to select, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think like a natural fit for this is Hyatt with some of their large, huge resort properties. But I mean, and again, there's a lot, like all of them have them. But
yeah,
I mean, even like Hyatt, like I'm looking at, they have that McDonald's campus, which is right outside Chicago or something. It's just
that's correct.
Natural.
Yep.
So
there's plenty of, any operator has, Hilton, Hyatt, IHG, Marriott obviously have resorts with additional land, and that they could place this in.
Yeah. We have a couple questions on Facebook. Just Valerie's asking, can a cabin with power be considered glamping? So I think this is an interesting topic too, is people's perception of what classifies as glamping can sometimes be varied. Tom, what's your position on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I know David talked about, the sustainability component, but I still think you need power in a glamping site it can be considered glamping if you have power, water, all that. That's, it's about the experience and the unique accommodation and the amenities inside. And you can add amenities, power can be an amenity. So,
yeah, I think I've seen parks that offer like cool, unique tiny homes and cabins, lots of hard-sided structures that are classified as glamping. So I don't think it's specifically just those really cool, unique, covered wagons and tents and things like that. We see a broad range of accommodation types. And then Maya's asking about glamping units that are suitable for winter conditions. So I'd say certainly defaulting to those hard-sided options is probably easiest and most likely. But I have to admit, I'm not intimately familiar with the structural capacity stuff related to some of those softer sided the outfitters tents and things like that. I do know several operators in Canada who have those types of structures and do take them down in the winter time. So I would argue that it's probably best. They're probably best, shoulder and summer season only. So Maya, if I were you, I would certainly make a hard-sided structure choice. And I mean, there's tons of options out there.
Right. Yeah. Anything. I agree. If it's a tent type environment, you're in a winter area, you need to take that down. Your season's going to be shorter. And I'd like to go back to the electrical side. If I were to build, as Brian offered me the opportunity to build something from scratch, I would probably have more of my units with electricity and water than without.
Agreed. Definitely agreed.
Like there's a ton of things we can cover here, and I think I initially intended our focus to be more on the hotels and the trends in the magazine and things with David and Tom here. I think maybe we need to put together another show, Cara, where we feature 6 or 7 of the vendors themselves who can just talk about their products. And so maybe we can put that on our list.
Yes, we should. I think that would be fabulous to really kind of compare options. But I know we did that at our Canadian conference, but it'd be great to go over that content again and deep dive with a few of them, do some comparisons for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think, because I think we have the sessions at the conferences where we kind of like walk that fine line where we talk about, we don't want to focus too much on one thing and we don't want to always have people selling. We want to have a discussion. So maybe we just do a show where they can literally just sell, like have a segment of sell me your thing and show me a video and show me your screen and show me whatever and give me your pitch. And maybe that's
I love that idea.
In one place. So
cool. Sounds great to me. But I definitely think that would bring value to members for sure. Oh yeah, we have lots of comments happening here.
And I get like, if you can share them, I don't know, like they're not coming through on my side. I think it has to do with my internet. So
no, they're not coming through Restream here for me. I'm on the Facebook, and they're commenting right on the Facebook group stream. So I think
I mean, maybe we can answer. I don't know if we can, but if not, we'll put together.
Yeah, we did. We covered Valerie's, and then there's just some back and forth here now with some of the folks watching, so that's great.
Yeah, the groups don't come through our comment stream, only the pages. It's just the Facebook restriction. But Tom, tell us while we're reading some of these comments.
Yeah, I would say from a glamping perspective, one thing that's a little bit different than if you were to develop a campground resort or anything like that, is the number of sites you could place per acre should be fewer, I would just say, than you would in a RV resort. I think one in particular component about glamping that people want is space.
Right.
So, the density you could create at a glamping resort isn't going to be near anything where you would do in an RV resort. Granted, RVers still want space between, but on 5 acres you can put a lot of RVs, where in 5 acres you can't put as many glamping locations.
Right.
Only because I think people are looking for that space between them and their neighbor.
But I think the math makes that possible, right? You're talking about a high end of, outside of some crazy properties of $70 a night, right? To $100 for an RV, where you can get triple that at least for a really nice glamping site.
Absolutely, but you have some probably additional operating expenses to some degree. What you provide. But I would say, what you would get for that site compared to a more traditional RV resort is substantial and should offset that cost. But that's all calculation you need to go through in determining how many sites and how close you want them or how far apart you can put them. But I think that's a big difference. People are looking for this, we've talked about location being important. And I said, you're not going to put a glamping resort as an exit off of a highway necessarily. You're looking more for that open space area with venues that they can, take their pictures and feel like they've escaped.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested, Tom, to know about the reservation side. I have questions sometimes from campground operators who say, like, if I'm going to go down this road and add glamping options to my park, do you recommend just utilizing the same reservation bookability tools that you're using for the RV portion of your business? Or do you kind of strategize to take advantage of things like Airbnb or additional, maybe booking.com or whatever to drive more traffic to those sites, since the market demographic is different?
I would do that owning an RV park. or oriented glamping. So yes, you would need to make sure you're utilizing all the different channels that are out there, because you don't know, I mean, you may know where you think you know where your customers are coming from, but the broader reach that you can create in turn creates more calls, in turn creates more demand, which is what you're looking for. So you do want to definitely utilize Booking.com, Expedia, Airbnb, all those third-party channels as much as possible.
Yeah.
So I think there's two sides here in my mind, right? Like, yes, I 100% agree with Tom. Absolutely. Obviously, Airbnb space is huge. The marketing opportunity and Expedia and Travelocity aren't far behind. And so I think that's kind of a no-brainer for me. Like, yes, you have to do that if you want any kind of mass exposure. I think the way I read some of that question in, though, is do I still use the RDPs and the Astras and the camp spots and is that kind of how I'm reading that question too?
Sometimes that's part of the question. I think oftentimes that stuff can come down to just the logistical options available to you from your software choices. But definitely both sides of that question have come up for me from operators. I think the majority of our software providers are solving those, like the majority of the park management software guys that are out there are offering solutions to that problem. I just think from a booking side, especially since so much of this has transitioned to booking online, specific to that market demographic shift and who's booking these types of accommodations, I think it's really wise to be utilizing the tools that those market demographics already use to expose your product to them.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I agree. I mean, I think, whether it's Astra or CampSpot and all those different property management systems, you need to have those in place to have a connection with the Expedias and Airbnbs that allows you to manage that process effectively and also gives you kind of a back office component to be able to produce financials.
Yeah. I have a question here too. Oh, sorry, Brian.
One sec. I think it's very much dependent on what again, like we talked about the different types of structures that you're choosing, right? I think it's dependent on what type of property you're running and what kind of exposure you're at and how many units you have and all those kinds of things. But don't be afraid to explore your options. I think that I think obviously the default go-to that I would never say anybody not consider first is the camp spots, RDPs, Astras, those kind of places, right? Yeah. But before you make a final decision, look at your other options. I think that there are probably properties that have 3 to 5 to 10 tents on a piece of land in Texas somewhere or Florida or whatever that could easily get by with just an Airbnb listing all by itself.
You're right.
And I think that's
a good point.
Like I know from a geeky website design perspective, like I can hook up WooCommerce and WordPress and you can take your own reservations with a great website designer and charge 2% and keep that for yourself. Not that I'm suggesting that should be done over a camp spot. Absolutely not, because they have way more property management features and all that kind of stuff. But consider your options and decide what's best for you.
Brian, that's a good point. I was looking at more from a size perspective and all that. But if you, like you said, you have 5 spots up in, the hill country of Texas, yeah, you can do your Airbnb and that kind of thing and work just fine and have it be very effective for you.
Yeah, I think one of the nicest things about using those tools is you can really track where your bookings and stuff are coming from. And so that's another great thing that you can kind of shift through over time. Maybe you initially start with several different tools and you that down over time, whatever's, bringing you the most traffic or whatever is the best strategy for you. Valerie's asking here, I've heard there are problems with mold with some types of glamping units and to have the mold removed is very expensive. Anyone have advice on this? I will say we did cover this quite a bit actually during the Canadian conference glamping session with the comparison session. Yeah, and all of our providers, all of our suppliers are really cognizant of that issue and all have solutions and suggested products and all kinds of things to both mitigate the problem, prevent the problem, and do any remediation afterwards. I don't have specifics.
if I remember right, I remember that was a specific question because I think Heather Blankenship actually moderated the session, right? And I
Yes.
remember I think she went vendor by vendor, and what we landed on was that mold is, in most cases, maybe outside of the Arizona desert, going to be an issue. But I think they all had different cleaning products and solutions, and the material was resistant to certain types of things, and the fabric and all that kind of stuff. So again, we'll have to dive into that maybe on a vendor show.
Yeah, well, and I will say, if Valerie, if you were a conference attendee, you do have access to that session in recorded format via the CCRVC members only website, so you can kind of rewatch that and get those answers specific to each of the glamping options that were presented during that session.
So what else we got? What else? I mean,
Tom, I'm curious to know. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have a bit of a lag. Oh, we'll just talk over each other this whole time. How about that? Sorry, Tom, I'm curious to know what different types of glamping options your various parks have. Are they all cabins? Do you have some outfitter tents? How does that look for you?
Well, I will be honest, and honestly, I can't say that we have the glamping site that we've been talking about here on this show.
Okay.
We are looking. We have, like I said earlier, we have 9 parks. There are a couple locations we think we could install something that we would market as glamping, and we do have some land that we are looking at, that we own, that we're considering it as a possible glamping location. Development process is going to take a few months or a few years, excuse me, with permitting and whatnot. But like I said earlier, this isn't going away, and there's plenty of space out there to expand and have more players come into play. And so our land that we have, we're looking at, that's a little bit of a more long-term play. But as far as our existing locations where we have parks, we have cabins at all our parks, but I wouldn't necessarily call that what we have is glamping quality with an experience and upgraded amenities and a real unique lodging component. But I think it's the next expansion for us, besides just growing the number of parks that we manage and or own, but also getting into the glamping space as a management, third-party management and or owner.
That's great.
I'm interested to see how unique this actually gets, right? Like I feel like we're so much in the infancy of this industry as far as glamping goes, that in 5 years, like, we're going to look back on this and be like, wow, we didn't even know what the heck we were talking about way back then.
Yeah. You're right, Brian. And then again, I know I will reference my previous life experiences. And that would be called amenity creep. So as you know, someone develops camping or glamping, and they do sheets and water and all that, then someone's going to go through, the thread count's going to be double, the amenities in there are going to be more expensive things, and more things will become prevalent in the glamping experience, just to kind of one up your neighbor a little bit, so that you can be perceived as the leader in the market when it comes to that experience. And that doesn't necessarily, it could mean a quality thing, like an actually material thing, from number of pillows, blankets, and coffee makers, toasters, and all those kinds of things that you can go into, or it can be the experience that you can create. Whatever that may be, given your location, you can create a pretty phenomenal experience. But in general, I would see that we're going to see more and more coming in, just be amenity creep, next best thing, something cooler, neater, nicer.
Yeah, so I think that's a natural progression with the thread counts and the pillows and the toasters and all that kind of thing. I'm thinking outside the box, right? Like I think
shocking.
Classic
car with every rental.
Well, no. Like what I'm talking about is like think of all the niches that you could target if you had land in the appropriate place or the ability to market it correctly, right? So here's an example. Like I used to have an employee who worked with me, a couple years ago, who was really big into those battle reenactments, right? And he would go and he would get together with thousands of people in a city in Ohio, and they would reenact like a medieval battle, right? So imagine if you could set up, if you had a piece of land where all these people were gathering or nearby, or you could even start your own festival, and you could create a village with like 200 medieval style tents where everything had suits of armor in it and stuff like that, and you could charge upwards of $500 to $1,000 a night for some of those theme type, like really theme type activities. And again, there has to be a way to make that work year round, right? But I mean, the sky's the limit of what you could do with some of this stuff.
Nothing's preventing you from doing any of that kind of stuff.
Right. And so that's what I'm trying to start some of the conversations surrounding it, because I think there's a lot of...
The only thing that would stop you is the market.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But I think there's so much room for that innovation out there that there's, I don't want to say it's a danger, but I think there's a one track, like, here's the tent that's being offered and here's what we can upgrade. And there's a kind of a linear progression, and the people that are able to figure out this stuff and think outside the box are not necessarily going to be the only people to succeed. Of course not. But they're going to have a unique market opportunity here that we're just beginning to understand and imagine, I think.
Definitely agree.
What happened to your video, Cara? You went away.
I have no idea. I remember before the show when my camera stopped working and I was like, hopefully this lasts an hour. Apparently I cursed myself. 52 minutes we got.
So Tom,
I'm cursed.
Again, we've got you here, your expertise, and we want to obviously, I feel like maybe we almost need to do a different type of themed glamping show every month, maybe, focus on different things. But specific to your experience in your parks, I know you said you haven't added that traditional glamping experience yet, but you and I did have a conversation the other day where you were talking about considering RV rentals and things like that. So how, in your mind, do you decide, other than location and the things that we've talked about, right? How do you decide from an ROI perspective or a market perspective that RV rentals or cabins are better than or worse than, not glamping, but yurts or teepees? Because it's all glamping in my mind.
You're right. I mean, glamping is a very broad term that a lot of things are going to be dumped into and be called glamping. And not saying that's right or wrong. It's just what it is. It's going to be. But so as far as what we're looking at, I don't have that location that I think for me right now, what we're managing and own, I don't have that location that would categorize as glamping. I have other components that I can put in, but I think location and creating that experience are key components to really be to categorize it as a glamping experience. And I don't have that yet. But once I get that, I will definitely look to implement that into that location as quickly as possible, because I think that's more and more people are embracing this as a way to travel. And I think it, to me, it's all about numbers in the sense of more people that it can attract, it's only going to benefit the performance of that as a business. So with more and more people looking at this as a way to travel, that's good. And they're looking to kind of, I think, the sustainability component in the sense of they're in nature. I'm not talking about something being heated by solar panels or anything like that, but there's a sense of being in nature that correlates to sustainability. And I think more and more people want to achieve that and make themselves feel good about being in nature. And, people still want to be together, regardless of what we experienced in the past 18 months, 2 years. I think people still want to spend time together, whether it's with family or with family and friends. So I think that's an important component to it. And, it has a very large appeal to doing this as opposed to going to some bricks and mortar location. So for me, once I have that location, I will definitely pursue that, because I think those are key components to making sure it's a successful operation. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got about 4 minutes left. Let's wrap this up with something interesting, right? I'm going to put you guys all on the spot, and myself too, a little bit. let's forget about for a second all of this stuff that owner operators and people coming into the business are worried about. Let's forget about the land, the development, the regulations, the permits, the ROI, the everything, right? And let's just say you literally have the opportunity to build anything anywhere, and it will be 100% guaranteed success. Themed, not themed, wherever it's at, whatever the target market is, it's guaranteed to be successful. What do you build and why? Carrie,
I pick a dome, geodesic dome.
I'm talking not even a type, but like if you could build a
That's
glamping like property or unit and own and operate, and it was guaranteed 100% successful, unlimited funds, what would you build and why?
Domes. I'd do domes. I saw there's a park somewhere in Europe that is like putting them up in trees, like building platforms, putting these clear dome glamping units up in trees. It's amazing to me. Gorgeous. Sold.
So I would pick a location. It'd probably have to be in the southwest, only because of the type of weather that exists. But also, I'm a snow skier. So if I could build something close that people could go up, sleep in the tent, yurt, whatever you want to call it, and then drive an hour and be skiing, that's the location I'd go to.
So here's what I want. I want to create an opportunity or a market that doesn't exist right now. So we know that we're broadcasting live on the Canadian Camping and RV Council page and in the group, and we've had a bunch of questions from that group. So here's the thing. If I have unlimited funds, I want to build kind of domes like Cara was saying, but I want to build domes that are big enough that you can have like your own yard and maybe a little river running through it, and it's totally heated in the winter. So you can kind of have your own property that's an enclosure that Canadians can go to in the dead of winter, or whoever can go to, right? That they can literally have a summer experience in the winter for a weekend. I think if you could figure out how to do that, and I don't think it's possible, but if you figure out how to do it profitably,
there's like places like, isn't there a ski dome in Japan or something where you can go skiing in the middle of summertime because they've climate controlled this big dome?
I don't know.
You can do it. Somebody can do it. It's done.
I'm saying,
trust you to take it to the whole next level.
I mean, I think it's like you've got millions of Canadians, just specifically speaking, right? Because we're talking about the group who are not going south for the summer, or for the winter, who are in these cities like Toronto and Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton and all those kinds of places, who are like, I mean, can you imagine the amount of money that you could charge for a dome like that for somebody to get away for a weekend and have a summer, like a real summer experience with a yard and
you missed your chance, Brian. The border will open and they'll all go south again. Your dome will be empty.
But I don't think they're all going south. I think there's a different, Yeah,
Darlene's saying Dubai. That must be where I saw it. Dubai. They have a dome and it's got a ski resort inside, but it's like in the desert.
Like
right.
Dubai is literally like, we should be talking to you. That's the example of like unlimited, do whatever you want.
You do whatever you want world. Yeah. That's unlimited funds, no development restrictions. Do whatever you want.
What Dubai is. I feel like that's what it is. Every time I hear a story about them.
They have a dome with a ski resort inside. I'm sure that it's in Dubai. I wouldn't be surprised at all. It can be done. Get out your wallet.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Is there anything else you want to add, Tom, before we?
No, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this great and very exciting segment in our business. And hopefully I can tell you soon what our next adventure is with IVEE. So.
Yay. Can't wait.
Yep.
We're looking forward to hearing about it. So thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks, guys.